Thank you for attending tonight's meeting of the Sustainable Community Overview and Scrutiny panel. I'd like to welcome you all to the meeting, and I'd like to take this time to recommend that we all treat everyone in the room with respect, both councillors and officers. And for your attention, the meeting is being live streamed and recorded. I've received one apology for absence. That's Councillor Johnston, who will be replaced by Councillor Hubler. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? No. Excellent. Can I get approval on the minutes of the previous meeting from the 9th of March, those to attend?
Thank you, Chair. It's not on the minutes as such, but I've noticed that the action log has dropped off the agenda again. Can I ask that the action log is restored and reviewed and things like that? Because it's quite a useful bit of our process.
Absolutely.
One moment. I'm not a sub, I'm the member here. I am the sub.
My complete apologies. Councillor Henry is substitute. Councillor Hubler is on. My apologies. I confused the sitting together by the page. Understood. Any further recommendations to the minutes? Excellent. Thanks very much. We'll move straight into Cabinet Member priorities. I'd like to start with Councillor Neeson.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'd just like to start by putting forward a thanks to Harry Kane for the wonderful work he's done, ensuring that we're not all anxiously looking at our phones, wondering what's going on over in the States. So, yeah, I'm very grateful that we've had this meeting to focus on this. I'm also really delighted to be reappointed to this role as Cabinet Member for Transport and Cleaner Streets. I'm delighted that, a lot of people say that elections are decided by the state of the streets and the roads, and I'm delighted that the voters of Merton have placed their trust in us to continue that work over the next 4 years. Priorities to me, can really be summed up in just a few words, which is residents having pride in the place they live in. We want our communities to be clean. We want people to feel like when they walk out, the moment they walk out of their house, they've got a community, a place that they feel proud to live in. And so sitting on that, the three key things that I think lead to that is making sure the streets are clean. We've already done a huge amount of work on this over the last year, particularly with insourcing our street cleaning. And I think, and I heard it from residents throughout the last 6 months, just one of the improvement they see in the difference to the cleanliness of their streets. I also want to take particular praise to our street cleaners who do such a fantastic job. And last week, we had such hot weather, they still did an incredible job keeping our streets clean. And alongside that, we've also done things like our pop-up tips, which are still incredibly popular. I was one a couple of weeks ago in Colliers still hundreds of people using them, and people come out to us and saying how happy they are with the service, how useful it is for them. But there is more to do to that, and I'm always delighted that we've delivered our key election pledge at the election, which is introduced a free bulky waste service. That service is already up and running. We've already had hundreds of residents using it. I'm already getting great feedback about how useful that is for residents. Alongside that, we'll be doing things like using cameras and further enhancing our street service. We've also just bought it a year ago. But there's still absolutely more we want to do to make our streets absolutely fantastically clean. And I'm really, really happy with the work that Caroline has done, that Kelly has done to get the service in place in such a short amount of time. The other key thing is holding fly tippers to account. I know, I'm sure everyone can appreciate how frustrating it is to see fly tipping in their community, and people want to know that something's being done about that. So we've already done a huge amount in this smart wall of shame, from increasing the fine levels to introducing more cameras to our fly tipping incentive scheme to installing signs at hotspot areas. But we want to do even more. So we are currently getting more cameras to put in the community to tackle those hotspot areas. And we really want to work with everyone to make sure they know that where there is issues, repeat issues, that we'll be doing everything we can to capture those fly tippers, hold them to account, and deliver the fines they deserve for trying to dump waste in our community. I'm really proud again of the work the team has done, particularly Jim Cook in our waste team. He does a really fantastic job. He's incredibly responsive and he's regularly going out wading through waste and trying to find the culprit behind these. So really, really happy with the work there. Absolutely want to do more. And the final thing is ensuring that our transport network is as accessible as possibly can be. Now, this obviously includes the basics like tackling potholes and making sure on top of that, but we just passed our walking, wheeling, and cycling strategy. And that is all about trying to make this borough as accessible for everyone, however they live in our community. So I'm really want to see progress in the if now that we have that plan and deliver that plan over the coming years. So that's the key points from me. And I'm happy to take any questions in those areas or any other parts.
Thank you very much, Councillor Newton. In particular regards to tips, having tenants that were on their own ward, they receive absolute praise, and I imagine it's the same across the borough. I see a question from Councillor Holden, Councillor Henry, and then Councillor Smith. We will take them in rounds of three.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Newton. Firstly, going into the flood team, blame out some of the drains that were affected by the flooding the other week. I just wanted to ask you, what action will you and the council take against the likes of Thames Water or another failure on their system that impacts our residents?
Can I say the questions?
Yeah, Councillor Henry.
I just want to say thank you, Councillor Newton, and on behalf of my colleague Don Johnson, I just want to say we do appreciate you working alongside us as councillors by going out into the ward and looking at issues and concern that we have, because sometimes when we do report it, because the officers do not come up and see themselves, we haven't got it done quick enough. So I just want to say thank you as well. And also thank you for working alongside us in the Housing Association to ensure that the fire taking and all the rest of the address in the way that we would like it to address. So thank you.
And Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. According to a recent Transport for London report, Mercer currently ranks 16th out of 20 outer London boroughs for fast electric vehicle charging provision. I wanted to ask how the council intends to improve on this. I note that Transport for London identified that a lack of land, lack of suitable sites, was one of the key impediments to providing better fast charging provision. So, in particular, how does the council intend to land available for suitable sites?
Councillor Newton.
Thank you very much. So to begin with, Councillor Holden, your question, you're absolutely right. Thames Water, again, as they've done many places across the borough, did a pretty terrible job, or basically no job at all, cleaning up the streets that were affected in the water. And thank you for, I know your continued engagement with raising those concerns. They weren't being addressed. Thames Water aren't supposed to be cleaning up when there's solutions like that. But instead, the council had to step in because you couldn't just waiting endlessly for Thames Water to get their act together. And so on those works in particular, we're already racing with them. And to be honest, I quite like to see them pay for the work that we've done on their behalf. So we're absolutely following up with them and some of the other issues that they've been causing across the borough, particularly on some of our main roads and time that it takes to clear those works and get them done. But just on that as well, we recently introduced, I think as of today, our main rental scheme is now official in the borough. So we have much more power to find out what charge a daily fee every day they're using our major roads across the borough. So I'm really hoping that will really positive impact on improving times, particularly when it comes to sewage works and drainage works. We'll see a much bigger increase in speed they work and all the funds that come from that will go back into making our roads even better. Thank you so much for your kind words. I know we work very closely with yourself and your colleagues and us, particularly around some of the issues with on the housing estates there and the moats. I know we've got a visit soon coming up, so really keen to keep up conversation with you and what we can do to work with you on that. And then Councillor Smith, to turn to your question, I mean, just to begin with, we have one of the best EV records of any councillor in any council in the country. They've 12 most lamppost charging vehicles.
It's to do with the fast EV charging, where Mercer ranks 16th. Johnson.
I will start to pick up as soon as you see.
So we do actually have a fantastic EV charging provision in the borough. I'm really happy that we have the 12th highest numbers of lamppost chargers. That is incredibly beneficial for residents across the borough for accessing those. Of course, we want to increase the other fast, the ultra fast charging provisions as well. Those are slightly more difficult to do, to make sure they're in the right places, to make sure there's companies behind them. But we do have an EV strategy that's all about increasing that provision. And so we're working with those companies to deliver that strategy.
Yes, if I allow a supplementary after that, I will go to other questions after councillors, and if there are any further questions, keep them.
Okay, no, I think you did actually cover it there. Really just to say yes. Are you currently looking? Do you have any parking to make available? Because as I say, it really was a lack of suitable sites and land council making land available for the transport for London identified as the main impediment.
Absolutely work with those companies. If there's land, there's spaces, but we're seeing demand, we're absolutely having to have this conversation with them. There can always be a give and take with putting things on the public highway. We want to make sure they're accessible. Some of these charging points can be quite bulky, and they can position itself, but absolutely, there's appropriate places where there's demand, we will 100% be pursuing. As if you know of any, your ward, you want to put forward, you want to talk about, very welcome to that conversation.
I've got Councillor Flack, Councillor Mercer, Councillor Platts.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on, I'd like to apologise for my voice. I'd like to just echo Councillor Holmes' comments about the sort of state of the roads after flooding a couple of weeks ago. In fact, while I understand the responsibility of Thames Water to clean up when things like that happen, I received an email today saying that the street cleaning will not be cleaning the road in Rains Park because it is the responsibility of Thames Water. I understand that it is Thames Water's responsibility, but you said that one of your priorities is that people can be proud to call Merton home. Those rules to which you could then toilet paper running down the street, it is still there. Is that something that you're happy with, or we agree that a priority needs to be we hold these account, and also the council does actually step in when we need it?
Councillor Mercer.
Chair, Councillor Nixon, I would like to thank you and say how impressed I am by the energy that you bring to your blog, and you do a great job. So thank you for that. Specifically, I know that you're an EV enthusiast, EV bicycle enthusiast, because I've seen you in video with one, so it must be true. But during the canvassing process, building up to the election, there were a number of residents who raised with me EV parking spaces, which they thought were dangerous and were actually potentially causing accidents. I'd like to raise the issue with you after this meeting, and potentially with one of the officers who I dealt with before. But I'm grateful for your reassurance that you're happy to look at the location of EV parking and making sure that you make the most of that system.
Councillor Platts.
Councillor Lehman, again, thank you for all the work you do, and we certainly the efforts of the football chips and the whole waste collection staff being transformative in the borough. I mean, residents are really impressed, and I think that's really good to see the place that we live. Just so again, people looking up on council versus comment about cycling. I'm also a cyclist, as you know. So just what sort of plans do you have in terms of helping encouraging cycling in the borough in particular? How do you plan to make cycle lanes safer for both cyclists and pedestrians?
Councillor Nixon, sorry, please.
Thank you very much. So Councillor Platt, you're absolutely right that we need to make sure the streets are clean. And from what I understand, when the council attended Norton shortly and quickly, there were lots of cars and things blocking parts of the road. It makes it difficult to catch if there's things that are undercars. And so, obviously, now when cars moving out, seeing some of that. So we are, as I was on my phone there, just going through my emails from one earlier today, we are talking to Thames Water as we speak about sorting that out. But again, if it's the case that Thames Water are not going to be responsive enough on this, then we will have to step in and do these works ourselves. This should not be the role of the council to have to be cleaning up after them. As I mentioned, this is not, and everyone knows it's not the first issue we've had with Thames Water. I'm sure you've had plenty of other in your ward, as I think everyone has in theirs. So if it's the case that we find out that they're not going to be doing that anytime soon, then we will have to make sure that we own them again and we'll sort out that. And if again, there are issues with accessing cars, we have to look at how we get to that waste, because yeah, it's completely unacceptable that stays on the public.
read this very quickly.
I will allow supplementary if it goes any further than that, councillor.
I just a timeline, like you say, much longer, like it's been 2.5 weeks and the residents are human.
Councillor, microphone, please.
Salary. Much longer, we gotta wait.
So we did the first meeting yesterday on this stuff, as I believe, so when we first stepped in. If there's the case that they're not going to be doing that, then we're talking imminently that we're going to have to do something because we can't just sit around and wait for them to do that. Just first, thank you very much for the kind words. Just to have when you talk about EV, you're talking about the e-bike bays or EV light vehicles. Sorry, e-bike bays. No, it's yeah, absolutely. That's right. We have 350 e-bike bays around the island. Half the jobs don't, seem to be working very well. But I know there are bays that residents do regularly raise concerns about. We do look at those. We have moved a number of bays. If there is a bay or particular bay in your area, I'm very happy to come along with you and have a look at it, meet any residents who want to talk about that. That's not to everyone in this room. So we actually want to make sure that those working and I think that's something you might have seen as a big concern raised by some of what's going on at Wimbledon at the moment, making sure the e-bikes are properly managed there. I had a site meeting in Wimbledon Village yesterday with Lime and Forest to look at the works themselves, make sure they know the absolute critical importance of doing everything they can to manage those properly. So you've got a very good dialogue with those companies. So we want to make sure that they're managing those bays from the bikes that fill them up, and that we're also doing the part of making sure those bays are in the right place as well. And just to come on to your question, cycling, like I mentioned, is one of the key things. I do cycle pretty much every day. One of the big things we have done already is double the number of cycle hangers that we have in the borough. That was one of the big pledges that we had and we delivered last year. We've now got this cycling plan with nearly £2 million behind it. So as part of that, we worked with a cycling campaign and a number of other local groups to identify places across the borough where there could be cycle lane improvements or could make things safer. And now, as I mentioned before, we've got hopefully now is delivering that, and they're ready to do the plan. So I'm sure we get.
Very much. Councillor Bergor, Councillor Hopper, and then Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly on Councillor Nurse's point, I've got at least 2 or 3 problematic EV bays where the process has been going on for over a year.
I'm talking about e-bike or
e-bike bays. And the residents are absolutely screaming in pain in terms of the disturbance they go through. One, where we've had a TRO consultation and then just in action, there's no process and officers will not reply and give a time frame. It's just really unacceptable in a way I can't support my residents. That wasn't my question, that's just a comment because it's been brought up. And thanks for mentioning pop-up tips and free bulky waste. Bit of success for good cross-party scrutiny as well, because pop-up tips, of course, were a recommendation from this as well before they were implemented more permanently. Free bulky waste, can you confirm that it's being funded on an ongoing basis and what that costs annually, please? And then if I may, one of your predecessors as the cabinet member for transport had as a priority road safety, and I just wondered what the general trends in accidents and injuries in the borough are.
That's 2, Councillor Bergor, but I will allow in this one. Councillor Hopper.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to join the congratulations of your energy, you did a good job as well. And regarding, Lime and Forest, Model Lane and London Road, it's always an idea with all the bikes because they have the intersection of zones. So they really have been through, all along the neighborhood. I saw one of the pictures you have right in the entrance of Model Park. Perfect picture, I thought you have taken it. But there's constant bikes along both roads. Bad parking because apparently there is a zone or management area. So we can do something together about that, both companies, will be much better.
Councillor.
Thank you. I also wanted to ask about road safety. I wasn't sure if you were aware that the police don't seem to be deploying speed guns anymore. This has been a problem in Woodland Park for a little while. And back at the last police panel, I asked 3 councillors actually offered to pay for one. Because we felt that, road safety was becoming a bit of an issue in and I had a response from the police saying, I've spoken to my inspector regarding this. In short, he's basically said we have to politely decline the offer due to policies. They've removed STT teams, the speed guns that were removed have now been redeployed across teams within the roads policing command. There is work underway, however, for new cameras to be obtained and resourced for the borough, so we're hoping that we'll get one eventually. So I just wondered if you were aware that the policy now of the police is not to deploy speed guns, and the chances of getting a camera in problem areas we have in the park is not likely to be dealt with very quickly. So what do you think we can do about that? And also I'm quite interested in what the key performance indicators might be for road safety and how we're checking basically the problem roads and what the statistics are on accidents. Yes.
Notice, Councillor Newton has said he will happily speak to you regarding issues with Lyme and Forest in particular wards. I think it would be best if we bring those forward to him in email or speak to him after the meeting. If there are any further points on individual particular bays that are causing problems. But I'll refer over to Councillor Newton.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, so just to start, start off on the e-bike days. I think obviously we did mention the specific ones, but I think that good idea the ones that we're talking about. As I understand well, the process of moving forward was on changing a number of days. So I don't know your head, but my head, if those ones, I believe that there's quite a few we're looking at changing. Because I know there are these problems. I do appreciate, the frustration of residents. It's always a balance to try and make sure that we have the right provision, the right places, so that people can use those bikes and resident access to them. But then we also don't want people to be having issues where bands are coming outside late at night. And we can make, and we do ask some certain bays are these non-deployable bays where they shouldn't be made for social visits. But I'm not sure there's a 100% success rate for them actually doing so. And even then, I know there's other issues that they can attract with just noise generally and things like that. So actually, those long-running ones, I hope we'll have a solution for soon. Just on your questions around bulky waste and I think kind of road safety sort of specific, I might pass on to Caroline, who might be a bit more some notes there.
On the bulky waste, what we're doing during this financial year is evaluating the impact of bulky waste and therefore the likely cost. So we're offering a free service, but we're also offering still a paid for service. The free service is once in a rolling 12 months, and the paid for service is obviously whenever a resident wants it. So we have to very carefully look at how much income we're going to lose as a result of free bulky waste, as well as the costs involved with collection and disposal. And we don't know those at the moment. We think they're going to be around about 320k, but that is a guesstimate at the moment based on scenarios, and of course those scenarios could very well change. That funding will be covered in this year by non-recurring funding, and then we will bring forward a growth bid through the budget in the normal budget process once we know what that figure is and if we need an injection of revenue into the budget, into the waste budget. So that's how we're working on that at the moment. With regards to road safety, we have lots of stats on road safety, as you might imagine, and they're primarily used to decide what schemes we're going to do under the local implementation plan. So we get funding from TfL for transport schemes, and there are various different stats that go together to decide where we put some interventions in. So we do have that information. It's not part of the dashboard, it's not part of that performance framework that is shared across the council, either with officers at a senior level or with members, but we do have that available.
And just kind of a bit more, a bit broader on road safety. Actually, I think also about accessibility of the roads, want people to feel safe and it's no good being able to, living outside, walk outside, if you feel safe walking down the street. And just, earlier this week I was in Morden, speaking to residents of Queen Mary, who are having issues with speeding down their roads. So we really do want to make sure that people feel safe in their community and are things that we can look at as a council. Unfortunately, one of the abilities we don't have is reduce speed cameras. This is exclusively with the police. And certainly I understand we require Act of Parliament to change that. So we can't introduce speed cameras at the moment, which I know is kind of frustrating for residents. But we can look at things, visible interventions, for example, speed bumps, for example, road narrowing, things like that that might help reduce speed on the roads. So where those are those cases where we are getting repeated complaints from residents, we want to do things like a speed test. We both put these wires across the road, measures the number of cars coming down, the speed, the weight, and then we can use that to sort of inform what sort of intervention, if any, is needed on the road. So there are particular roads where there's issues. I'm not sure if speed tests have been done already, but it's not. It's definitely something we can look at doing. Really keen to the councillors to make sure that residents feel safe and getting back to their community. And just to touch on your question about e-bikes. So you talked about a really thorny issue we're dealing with at the moment with e-bikes, where there's lots of different boroughs approaching their own different schemes with different e-bike companies. Unfortunately, where you particularly that lower Morning Lane is the intersection with Sutton Council, who I'm not sure if they've made a decision yet. I can't even put a procurement process about only having 2 of the sort of 3 providers. So what we often did is, I think at the moment they don't let line into the borough, and so bikes then go to that corner, the bike stops working. What happens is the ride actually slows down, so you can only go up 10 kilometres an hour or something like that, and you can reduce the crawler. The idea is to totally it off, and then people sadly don't go and find a bay to put it in, they just dump it at the border. It's a really difficult issue. It seems across London where different companies have different policies. Ladies and gentlemen, don't want to be we can't control sadly what other councils might be doing there, who they go into business with e-bikes. So we do try and work with these companies, try and address this is a particular hotspot issue and they need more resource to deal with it, because there should be no bikes that are stopping anywhere that aren't in a bay, and the riders are supposed to get a warning at first and then an escalating series of fines. But if you're saying these issues, please let me know, and we can definitely raise that line specifically that we want them to dedicate more resource to that area, so that we're not seeing bikes hanging around there, just blocking pavements.
Further questions? I'll go to Councillor Budd now. Councillor Holden and Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to thank you for visiting our ward, and also me and Councillor Stringer recently. My question, I'm interested in the new graffiti removal service for businesses, which is a recent improvement. Have you got an update on how that's been working, and is it integrated into Fix My Street?
Thanks. Thank you. Have you developed plans yet to coordinate between different departments about things like tree works and utility works and road works? We keep seeming to be having problem inside other parts of London, but it all often occur at the same time. We don't speak to each other, and our department goes in and finds it. Is there a way? Have you got any plans to try and have some heads together in those departments?
And Councillor.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about Hayden's Road station, why it's not step free. I understand that it was promised when that flat development was built. It was part of that scheme. Why is it not underway? What steps are being taken to progress this matter?
Thank you. So just I'm not passing on detail Caroline, but really happy with how the research is going on. I hope you'll notice the difference in their community. I have another visitors, really proud and celebrating these steps on being moved and will keep coming back and dealing with this. So again, talking about pride in place, making sure that graffiti is tackled. It's not something that sticks around. It's I might, as I can, to Carol, talk about some of the details.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't have stats in front of me, I'm afraid, but the commercial graffiti removal service has been really very well received. It's operating on a different model than you might imagine. So it's not, we're not being reactive to graffiti that happens. What we're doing is working with businesses, getting signed indemnities from them if they're going to have their graffiti removed, and then we're removing it. So it's a very proactive pro-business approach to it. And at the moment, that's free to businesses, they don't pay for it. But of course, we do have to have their permission because there's a potential for shuttering or the frontage of buildings to be damaged. So we do need to make sure we indemnify it. I haven't got the stats, very happy if yeah, we can, I was just going to say if the chair would like, I'm very happy to circulate. Some stats. Yeah, okay. On the coordination of tree works, parking, highways works, etc., we do really try hard to coordinate. There's a lot of interaction between the various teams, as you might imagine. We don't always get that right, and I think the example that you've used, Councillor Holden, is a case where there have been some difficulties. That's partly the council just not quite getting it right there, and it's partly also drivers not moving cars at the appropriate times. And so I think with that particular case, there's a combination of issues at play, but generally we do get it right, and there is a lot of collaboration between teams. On Hayden's Road Station and step-free access, you're absolutely right. It's part of the original planning application to do step-free access to that particular platform through the development that's just the other side of the bridge. The planning, the developer did not fulfil their obligations under the planning application, and time has moved on, and our ability to enforce under that planning application is gone. However, we are seeking legal advice. There is ongoing legal advice around it, including the council stepping in when necessary to make sure that step-free access is delivered. But it's an ongoing situation, and we are in correspondence with the developers. There's a complicated land ownership arrangement now, which I won't bore everyone with, but it's something that's definitely on the radar, and we're pursuing all avenues that we can.
Thanks, Caroline. Right, I have Councillor Smith, Councillor Burke, Councillor Fairclough, and we'll go for one more round. We can just ask them on particular ward questions if you want to speak to Councillor Newton after the meeting or via email. Much appreciated.
Yeah, I do just have one brief one on separate expectations. I mean, in South Wimbledon Station, there was a preliminary study done by Transport for London, which was quite positive for providing it there. But they don't have the budget at the moment, and they won't move to a full feasibility study unless there's possibly external funding available. From speaking to the council officers, they say they might be able to provide funding, but they would first need a full feasibility study. Could you work with Transport for London to try and break this catch-22 situation?
So, as I mentioned, we've had quite significant trouble in Rose Park. I know that other parts of the park has got some more specific question on this. We've been calling for sustainable flood solutions, such as rain gardens, as painful as it may be, working with Thames Water, better and more frequent clearing of our trees across the borough to prevent these sort of substantial flooding issues happening in the future. We continue to, we agree that one of the priorities would be to work with councillors to make those changes happen across the wards.
That's about.
Thank you. On traffic improvement measures, you seem to indicate that when there were problems, it might be possible to meet with councils and see what you could do to try and understand those problems. We often get knocked back by officers about specific improvements unless there is a high enough KSI rate, which is killed and seriously injured. To residents, that often seems particularly callous, albeit I understand the reasons to need evidence for measures. But you seem to be implying that there might be a wider opportunity to look at measures that don't link to having to be deaths or serious injuries first, and also on enforcement of weight limits. I wonder if you might talk briefly about enforcement of weight limits.
Thank you, Councillor Nips.
Thank you very much. Just to start with, step access. There's also a feasibility study we carry out at College Wood Station as well, and also at the Tooting Walkway. I believe that we're expecting results of if they're going to be doing College Wood Station in summer, when I last inquired. Can I let you want to go a bit more from South Wimbledon situation?
I don't know more specifically on South Wimbledon, but I do recognise the sort of circular argument that you mentioned, and it happens everywhere in every London borough, certainly all of the ones that I've been in. Usually what happens is step-free access is provided linked to a development, so there tends to need to be some income coming in order for TfL to be able to fund the step-free access. That's not a reason for us not to continue it and to continue to argue for it, but it does require that the power sits more with TfL than it does with us. Nonetheless, it should be continue to be a lobbying issue. Do you want me to?
I might just briefly just on the step there as the absolute aspiration of councils is for all these stations to be step free. That's absolutely what we want to get to. I know these can be very expensive interventions from TfL, but wherever we can support this, we can we want to do that. There is a long stretch of that Northern Line, so it's more than doesn't have any access, so we really do want to get there. I was just Googling now just to get it up in front of me, because we do put on the council plan question you made about flood risk. We have just recently part of our local flood risk management strategy. Part of that is looking into sustainable drainage and things like that. But Caroline might be able to talk about the detail of what we're doing there. This all came out after we had spate of flooding a couple of years ago in kind of Grace Park area in particular, and what we can do to avoid that in the future. And while we haven't had terrible storms over the last couple of years, we are seeing the impacts of climate change and are expecting more erratic weather of these things to become more regular. So we really do want to make sure that we have a very strong program of clearing drains and things like that. And please do, where you see these perform on this street, let us know. We want to do this as possible. We also be very proactive work with doing that as well.
The flood service is just going through a bit of a transition at the moment. So very shortly, the officers will move from housing sustainable development to my department. So I'm not all over the detail of it at the moment, and please forgive me for that. But Councillor Nicholson is absolutely right. The strategy has just been approved by the council, by cabinet, and that would be basically the plan that we need to follow. We are doing some work internally as a result of the recent heat wave to make sure that we've got an action plan that comes out as soon as the heat wave is comes into play. Now I know it's not the same thing, but I'm using it as an example to say we are going to have to adapt to climate change, and there will be more issues of flooding. There will be more issues of heat. There are bound also to be issues of cold at times. So as an organisation alongside all others, we are going to have to adapt our approach. But what we're doing is set out in the strategy.
And then just on your question, about kind of road safety, you're completely right that there is a rather morbid, often criteria. It's now that's typically more how the police definitely use their interventions. The level for them to put a speed camera anyway is so ridiculously high at times. You know, it is incredibly frustrating. And I just like to say it would be great if councils had more power and leeway to be very good, so we can respond more proactively to resident concerns. But with how we're approaching that, obviously there are things like the funding constraints and working with resources, but where there are issues that we can identify, and if we can introduce a solution that could be something fairly lowly, not something massively reinventing the road, but if there are things like that that we can do somewhere, then I actually want to explore them. If we, again, there's discovering lots of demands for those kind of interventions across the borough. We do so have quite a few roads where that's affected, but we, as I mentioned before, we have the speed test service that we've done that really helps kind of make the case if there is a major speeding issue going down the road. So definitely in the first instance, it's great to get one of those done and try and see how that issue is. And once we know that, we might be able to see, okay, right, this is a place to prevent it, or speed bumps, or road night, or whatever it might be. And obviously, those can have their own other side impacts as well, and we make sure that things like that go in the right places and the residents support it. But absolutely, if there are places like that, you're getting great concerns, if you are in this, things like that, please do let us know, because we want to make sure that we respond to that. And just on the HGVs, I know there's another issue doing this like Hartfield Road and other places like that. There's a few other roads across the borough that also have those limits on. We are one of 4 councils in London to get funding from TEC, the Transport and Environment Committee, that is looking at how we can be kind of piloting, we can be kind of the forefront of enforcing against those limits. And they are very difficult to enforce against, because it's not just about seeing a vehicle go down the road. There's a vehicle could have access, but it's where that vehicle goes at the end of that. So you have to kind of measure sort of beginning to end that journey, as you know from looking at it before. So I can say right now, and literally, so today, there's very active stuff going on heating convention. I know after it's one of those roads that they're definitely looking at. So I hope, I can't say there'll be much time to tell out, but there's actually something going very active right now. I really have to have a conversation with you and some of the residents as well there about what we're doing there in the future on that.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to do a final round of 4, and that will be the end. And then I will allow Councillor Leveson a hydration break. I have Councillor Henry, Councillor Mercer, Councillor Rodriguez, and then Councillor Daniels, and then we will sub on the deputy leader.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Leveson, I've even just got a text from one of the residents about the clothes banks, not only in Parallel, but in different areas where they are not fabricated. I think as councillors, we did not get any consultation where they were going to put these clothes banks and become a high store, especially when they're in front of resident business places, homes. So I'm wondering whether or not there's anything you can do to have some of those clothes banks removed. I'm happy to show you around where they are, where we are not happy with them.
Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of clarification points and one small question. The walking, cycling, wheeling strategy has just been passed, so we can see it in the minutes of the last cabinet meeting, or yeah,
we're not March.
Okay, thank you very much. There was reference to statistics available for road safety. Will we be seeing any, or is that for consideration? That was the second question, and second clarification. And the simple question was, we've got a tram stop which I had introduced you to, and it's off London Road. And whilst it does have wheelable access, if you want to go the long way round, I'm wondering if you've given any thought, or if you think you might be able to help with making things possible to go the short route instead of the long route. Thank you.
Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. Looking forward to the visit in Pollard Hill, Councillor Newton, and recently on a walkabout with my ward colleague around some of the estates and with representatives from the Local Housing Association. And one of the things we looked at was the kind of hotspots for fly tipping known on those estates. And we actually spoke to some residents who were actually very positive about some of the recent changes that they'd seen on the estates. They noticed it, and actually even walking around, we could see the kind of resources that were being very active. It's encouraging to see it's not just Harry Kane having to tidy up other people's messes and Victor's playing sweeper. So could you just say a little bit more about what resources you're using to tackle not only fly tipping, but the build-ups and the sources of those known hotspots?
Fine, Councillor Banks.
Thank you, Chair. The pop-up tips seem to be inaccessible in some way for some residents, especially if they're elderly or they do not have they do not drive. So what I'm wondering is there a way for it to be more localized for public roaming to accommodate these issues?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So just to start on the close banks, you're absolutely right that they can become quite, difficult sites when they get filled up and not being emptied properly as regularly as they should be. I believe there is a phone number on those banks that you can call to help with. They don't answer. They've got to say up. So the siting of those locations is really important because sometimes if they're not, if they're not in the right place, then they can cause issues. They're in sort of quieter places where people get away with dumping. It's not acceptable to just go there and just dump a bag of waste and nearby. That's not how it works. The public tanks, they can provide reinforcing recycling service. We do want to encourage recycling in the borough, but we also want to make sure that the borough is kept clean and tidy. So if there's a particular issue with a certain we've seen repeated issues, it's not being collected quick enough, it's always being messy and untidy. Again, I'm not going to busy person, very happy to chat about that. And if there's a more appropriate place we can put it, might be a bit more public, that might lend itself less being abused, like it might be a moment and very to explore that. Councillor Mills, on your question, thank you very much for your time. We'll walk around that site. And you're completely right, having seen the sort of circuitous routes you might have to travel to take a bike or wheelchair down to the tram stop. The easy access just through that CCL would be much more appropriate. I know we've been anything dealing with TFL or some of these other landlords can all be more challenging than you hope. But I actually would like to pick that up again and revisit that. So if we can have another chat about that and see if there's things we can do to try and push that along, because that really will make a big difference to making that stuff more accessible for everyone around. Thank you much again for the question. And yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, tackling tipping is absolute my number one priority. It's what keeps me up at night. It's trying to put the area as clean as possible and ensure that we can hold people to account. And one of the most important things is working with people like those. For example, where there are housing estates, where it might be on their land, but residents don't necessarily think about. So so we need to actually regional partnership with them so we can get these things picked up. And so I'm really forward to seeing what kind of area with you when we get a chance in the coming weeks. But some of the things we've become really successful is things like our water chain that we've used, where we've identified a particular hotspot location. We have that data from big streets, so we can see residents saying this is a problem area. Putting a covert camera there can actually be a really good success. We're doing that, as I mentioned, in the process of getting a lot more cameras, so we have a lot more places like that. Another example I'm really happy with is one I've seen a few places, but also in my own ward, is to go a step further than that and not just have a camera there, but also having a sign as well in that location, picture of someone pointing at that location saying this person just got £1,000 fine. And I've seen locations that have been constant lighting, sorts of lighting, go from being out to every time I walk past it, it's pristine because of the things like that. So we've got reasons to success trying things like that. And so we want to keep doing that. We want to keep learning from other councils across the country, whether we can pilot things. You've mentioned before, we have a new flight tipping incentive scheme. So residents want to say, if they spot something going on locally, they can let us know. Fine, they'll get rewarded as a resident of £200. So we want to use every tool in the toolbox to keep the area as clean as possible. And yeah, I really appreciate the energy and wisdom you've taken to the role since you've come on board, and it's really important to work about keeping the area as clean as we possibly can. And then, as Danny's on your question about tips,
locations. You do try to move locations around to try and retain them so it's not always in the same spots. In particular, was the one kind of issue that we have is trying to find suitable sites. There's quite a lot that needs to be on site to accommodate that. You know, when you've been to them, we were seeing that we'll have 6 trucks that could be down there. So the number of spaces in the borough that can accommodate 6 trucks, but also the kind of traffic that comes through, making sure that area that isn't too far from people and things like that can be difficult. And I know places like St. Hay, there is difficult places for that, often they're quite the north of the borough. But we're absolutely very keen to look at if there's suggestions of locations you might know, you can want to suggest to us, please do. We'll go look to them, we can speak to landowners and one, we can try and work out agreements with people to let us use that space if we're helping that person. So any place that you know, please do let me know, really keen to explore.
Thank you very much. I would really like to thank the cabinet member for coming and taking questions from the committee this evening. I wish him great success in achieving one of his priorities. Thank you very much, Mr. Newton. I'd now like to pass over to the Deputy Leader of Council, to us for priorities for her portfolio.
Thank you very much, Chair. So yeah, I'm very honest all the comments towards the energy and the vigour that the council needs to bring, having been actually older and having been in this cabinet position for some time. I don't know how much energy I'll bring to the last minute stop, but I hope to. I have a really big portfolio as a cabinet member for sort of climate change. I'm going to try and keep to the topics that are squarely focused by this scrutiny, so we'll see if I open scrutiny as well. But feel free to ask me, so I'll try and help it. So, firstly, because I haven't been to this committee for some time, so I just want to reflect on what went really well in the previous administration. We're really proud of lots of what we achieved, particularly around our parks. We increased the number of green flags that we had and continue to increase the satisfaction levels that residents say in our independent objective survey of residents, the satisfaction levels that we have with our parks, and the number of new pocket parks that we installed right across the borough as well that have gone down really well. I'm also really happy with the number of new trees that we've got right across our borough. That was a huge piece of work to make sure that we're planting the right trees in the right places. The topic of climate change has already come up repeatedly tonight, and we're having to think about climate adaptability and making sure that we're planting those that can both help keep our streets cool, but our species that will survive well in our increasing streets. And at the same time, that we're not neglecting our existing trees that we have across our streets and our parks. So in terms of priorities going forwards, in parks there's always more to do because we actually love our parks, one of the reasons why I'm living here, and we want to make sure that they are really showing us at our best. So in a couple of weeks' time, the regional green flag awards will actually be held in Merton. We're really proud that they've chosen us to host it, so we're going to be at AFC Wimbledon. And we'll find out on that day in just over 2 weeks whether the green flags that we've already got, the 10 across our parks, are going to be re-awarded, and there are some new submissions that we've put in, so whether we're going to have any new green flags as well. So that's, for those who don't know, green flags are a national accredited recognition of the quality of parks. But in the meantime, we're cracking on with all the work. We've got playground upgrades being planned in Dursley, Joseph Heard. We're consulting as we speak on those. We've got a new paddling pool going in Morden Park. And later this year, we have a new provider coming in to take over looking after our green spaces. So ID Verdi's contract's coming to an end. We have a full competitive process, and we're appointing Glendale, who are so far working really well with us. Spending lots of time also with the Friends of Parks groups, which is brilliant. They're very committed to working with our local volunteer groups, and they'll be coming in as our contractor on the 1st of November. We made commitments in our election pledges around doing more playground upgrades and also more woodlands, and we will be looking at spots in our parks. We'll be planting huge amounts of trees to really bring up the tree canopy cover. We're working closely with local volunteers, local residents, Friends of Parks group, to do that. We've also made commitments around looking at spaces for new pocket parks because of how successful they've been and just re-energising spaces and green spaces in our borough. So there'll be lots more on that over the coming months and the year. And the trees, there's again all those work to do, because we've worked to look after our existing trees, as well as committing to, as well as delivering our commitment to increase the canopy cover. So we are a green borough overall, but we know this is very unequal. We want to increase the overall canopy cover, but particularly in those areas with lower canopy. We are going to be hosting, there's always lots and lots of questions, resident questions about trees, because we're how passionate we all feel about it. We are going to be hosting a webinar for councillors, hopefully in coming weeks, to explain the processes, the policies, and the best way to get responses and get information. So we have been working really hard to put more information on our website about the works that are on the way. So, for example, over the summer there are lots of works on existing trees in our parks underway, and if that's something in your ward, to be alerted about that, and that's going to be up online. We know that there's a lot of information that you guys have, so lots of webinars to go through all of that. I just another couple of areas I think covered in this committee. So culture, I think more broadly is covered in open scrutiny, but I'm going to say, like, in terms of the use of our parks for culture, we should have been really proud of some of the events we've had in the past months, including Richmond Carnival, which was the largest routine for some years. We had over 8,000 people. And a couple of weeks ago, the start of the Line Festival, which was part of the funding that we got from the London Borough Culture Programme. So we received 1.2 million funding from Fair London, Lottery Fund, and some others that we pulled together. And sometimes on a big flagship event. And I hope I saw some of you there, and I hope you had a great time. And it was really about bringing the community together in our beautiful green spaces. There's going to be much more cultural activation happening over the coming months. And so a lot of that activation is about how we live town centres. Going back to where Stuart started, we want people to be proud of our borough, proud of where they live. And it starts from opening a small shopping parade near them, the town centre near them. So we're going to be, as part of the culture funding, we're going to be having things like events in local town centres and hearing people's stories, to know some of the history of our area. And we're also going to be listening to businesses about what they think and the ways that we can really help to brighten up our town centres. So I'll stop there and lots of questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stewart. I saw Councillor Flack, Councillor Holden, and then Councillor Butler.
Thank you. I'm really delighted that lots of playgrounds will be getting an upgrade. I'm a little bit disappointed that the first conversation that's come out in the last couple of weeks failed to highlight that while the playground will be upgraded in the Joseph Hood, it will actually result in a closure of another one on the other side of the fields. Lots of residents have contacted us. They're quite upset that they're going to lose this, that there wasn't transparency from the council. And I'm just super cabinet member could sort of respond for us and so
on. Thank you. Good to hear about the trees. One problem we've come across recently, in particular, is when the tree canopy cover, basically electric measure. What plans do you have to help this particularly in wards where we don't have parks, so we can't have new woodlands? What options do we have, please?
Thank you, Chair. Also on trees, I've been involved in tree planting in my neighbourhood recently, and I noticed some real improvement in the responsiveness of the street tree teams over the last 18 months, especially. Can you explain some of the work that's been going to achieve that, and also generally how they're keeping our trees in such good condition?
Thank you very much. Council, I'm really sorry to hear that's how the community are feeling there, and so we are investing in this new playground there and getting the local residents and their families to feed into that. And I'm happy to pick this up, the executive, and come down and visit. But yeah, do take a look at this. We're consulting on, and we'll be looking at. We probably should have both started with. We're working as a kind of corporate and cabinet group at the moment on what our big council plan is going to look like next 4 years. So we're being really clear about allocating the capital and revenue for the services we'll be getting up to how many they actually need and can upgrade, how many choose to and so on. So we'll be more kind of about how we follow up during the phase. Council Holden, tree canopy cover. Yeah, so it is much easier to increase canopy cover if you've got lots of little parks and you can have lots of trees in them. It is harder when you've got lots of small terrace, Victoria trees and so on. And so we have to think creatively there. We have to think about, well, again, the right kind of trees, and we have to be really careful about while it's important to kind of maintain and remove trees if there are really risks, we have to, in those areas where they are, where it's hard to increase canopy cover, I think that's where we're going to be prioritising replacing trees when they are at the start to make sure we're not having a net loss. But again, happy to come and visit in the areas where we should make trees sure. In Council Building, yes, I know you've been working closely with some of our trees officers. So yes, about a year ago, we had a point of view our floricultural manager from Biggleston, who's done an absolutely great job in restoring a bit of a broken price straight away with, by the way, 5,000 trees in a few months. And has done that with, if we're on quite a tight, small team. So we're looking at investing both in our trees team and our parks team. And one of the areas that we particularly want to strengthen is around communications and engagement. Because we understand that it's not just about doing the work, it's about people understanding why you're doing the work, communicating it. If we ever do have to remove a tree in a park, for example, if we do that without saying anything, we'll get non-stop emails coming in and say, what's going on? Whereas if we were able to get more proactive, that this is a high risk tree, it's going to be able to damages and what we're doing it, these bits gone. And that's a bit more upfront work, but it means that everyone knows what's going on. So that's where we're putting more strength into teams.
Thank you. Councillor Fairclough, Councillor Smith, and then Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, and thanks to the cabinet member. Sorry, I'm going to ask about trees again. In terms of the extra communication on tree works in parks, I've received some of that, which is great. Apart from the fact that residents usually expect me to have precise details of exactly which trees are going to be removed and why, and that information isn't being given, other than tree works are going to be carried out. So just sort of the feedback. The council decided in the last planting season to only plant trees in certain wards. Now, I think it's fair to say that 17 out of 20 wards have below the long and wide canopy cover average, and I know we can kind of quibble about that. Obviously, you chose a lower figure to go with your interventions. Where residents, in my experience, in those wards who haven't been lucky enough to get trees complain the most is replacement trees and empty tree pits. And all they can see, and they can't understand why, those trees aren't replaced. And the answer I have to give them is, well, the council has chosen to plant trees in other wards, and not this one, this time. Although one street was lucky to get it, but only because officers thought it was in another ward and thought it was in Abbey, because they told me it was in Abbey, but it's not. But they were lucky. So I wondered if you might develop what the policy on at least replanting trees is like in the future. Maybe it could be ward-wide. Maybe ward isn't the right level. I know streets near me that don't have any street trees, but they're in wards that are considered to be fine. But again, people don't think in wards. They think about their streets.
Councillor Smith.
Yes, one concerns the public parks. I know it's not possible to report park issues on Fixed Street because these locations haven't yet been registered with the app. I did raise it to lots of about 6 weeks ago, and we've told us to be done in, and you were having us checked again on that now. It's still not been done. And additionally, I was told that the bins are already overflowing because these parks have again not been happy to put together park maintenance program. So is it possible to confirm when this will be fixed? And also, if new public parks are created in the future, can it be ensured that these items are addressed from day one?
Councillor Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Fair. And I thank you for your energy that you bring to the role. As I mentioned, the recent walk on the estates in Collas, I was actually struck by how much green spaces there are in the middle of the estates. And especially, we were there when it's very by trees, it was a heat wave. These are places that people can and should be kind of coming to get shade, and families, especially in those kind of really warm estates. But the feedback we got was actually around excitement around the new provider. I think the sense of they wanted a bit of a discussion of what could these spaces look like in future, the great opportunity. And the residents felt like they just wanted a bit of TLC and a bit of attention, not just to mow the lawn, but what could these spaces look like to create those warm and inviting spaces, especially with families together. And what will the new provider and that kind of change of contract, will there be an opportunity to look at what we can do with those spaces, particularly on these housing estates that actually have a lot of green spaces that might not otherwise be forgotten.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Photo, I hear you that people, sometimes we give people some information, they just want more information, they want to know exactly what's going on. And we understand that. And we do know that because we now have a very, very, very detailed tree database of every tree in the borough. I don't know how easy it is for us to say, it's this oak tree in this park. I think it's part of the issue. Sometimes they have been marked, and maybe there is a we can say that. Caroline, you have any comments on that?
I think we should continue to develop our approach to this and continue and give as much information as possible. So we're definitely on a quest to do that, and we're currently looking at a way of giving even more information to residents about what trees are going to be either felled or trimmed. So at the moment there's a QR code, and we're looking at a physical something on site, but we're looking to give more information because this is such an emotive thing, and people often see something that looks like a very healthy tree being cut down and get very upset, understandably, about it, and often the rot isn't visible. So we continue to get feedback, and we continue to try and iterate and improve, and we will continue to do that. So any ideas that anyone's got, please do let us know. Where trees are removed in parks, there's an awful lot of engagement with park user groups and our wonderful friends groups. So that may also be an option, but let me take that away. I've made a note of it, Councillor Becker, and I'll talk with the team about it.
Yeah, hopefully we're hearing both of us as the territory as we want to give people this information. Not least because I think it's the right thing to do, and also it's an easier thing to do rather than have lots of back and forth, so we will first of all. The tree canopy was written a couple of years ago, before the wall boundaries changed, which also introduced some errors and some issues. And while we are overall as a borough a very green borough, what that broke down to was at ward level canopy. So we focused the planting that happened in this tree season, particularly on trying to increase canopy cover in the wards within Merton that have a lower than average for Merton canopy cover. As I said, we are committed to doing more planting. We're working through at the moment the capital budget programme, what exactly that will look like. As I said, I think my preference would be for at least having a kind of the no net loss type approach or something like that. But it's hard to commit to that because it's never that straightforward because when the tree is removed, the stump is often removed sometime later because that's been a programme, and often if it's failed, it's because there's a really high fail. But yeah, we are looking at there's a number of trees everywhere, including those errors. And I also did hear about inequality within wards. I do still think it is an important message for us all to get across to residents about that there is huge inequality between wards. I'll give us an example. Somebody complained to me that they thought their road was getting new trees because they live on Mount Road and Park Ward, and then realised it was Mount Ward and Richmond that was hitting them, and they were very, very angry about this. And I actually was just going and look at literally a Google satellite map, and Mount Road's in one of those gorgeous streets, which is lined with beautiful trees. The one in Woodland Park, the one in Richmond, barely had it. What was Mount Road in Richmond? I don't know. It's terrible. Yeah, barely any. And so that was why it's a priority. So I understand, if you live on that area, you're not getting trees. I get it, but it is our job to say that why we're doing this across the whole borough. Councillor, yes, this is a headache. We Fix My Streets is brilliant because it tries to do so many things. But when I try to make changes and add things, there is actually a lot of back end work. So similarly, I'm assuming that without going to Walkish, we're talking about the high path pocket parking within there that's been over at the same time. And I've been escalating it this week as well. And we are still looking into getting that fixed. And you're right, we should be making it that when anything is dedicated to the park and you've been between that is integrated as quickly as possible. So we are particularly one like that, which is so close to two schools and the main walkway. Councillor Rodriguez, these are the kind of green spaces that we have in our state. So it depends if it's on land or remote land for start. But one of the things that we were clear with the new contract that we put out, the tender we put out is no two plants are the same. We've got huge variety, we've got some massive parts, we've got some small ones, and we've got a couple for that speech in there. So I'm very much hoping that there will be engaging at the individual level. And we're also really supportive of any new group that wants to come up to look after a pocket park, a small piece of land. You know, you don't have to be the size of Canada Park with their 50 volunteers to set up a friends group. You can just be a couple of people saying, right, we're the friends group of this green area, and we want to then therefore be regularly part of the communication with the council about how we can increase our private habits.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. I had Councillor Hall, then Councillor Mercer, and then I had, I believe, Councillor Platt. And then I'll do a final round of questions.
Thanks. I've actually got 2 questions on my end.
Oh no, this one is going to all.
I'm going into extra time now, Michael. Really nice.
Oh, don't worry, there are more puns remaining.
First one's really a bit of a comment. In Wimbledon Park, small playground, there's a rope swing in there, which has been repaired with duct tape, and it's been like that for months and months and months. And I've written in about it with photos. There are also surfaces that are broken, and today we learned the splashbacks down. So I'm hoping that will get some attention. So that's not really so much a question just yet. Start the line. Yes, I went, and lots of people seem to be enjoying it. However, could I just ask how many tickets were actually sold? How many attendees were there? The capacity was 15,000, I understand. And I spoke to a number of food stall owners who were quite upset because they'd had a message saying, oh, the capacity is 15,000, we're going to cap it at that. But there was nothing like that number there. And of course, they have brought in food and got extra staff for an event which they expected to have quite a large number of people attending. And so I think from their point of view, it was a disappointment. Having said that, I just wondered whether you view it as a success. What were your targets? But and what were the numbers? How did it go for you? Thanks.
Councillor Mercer.
Thank you. I would like to second Councillor Fairclough's concern expressed about replacing trees that have been taken away. It's particularly hard talking to residents about how the council is expanding the number of trees considerably when someone's had a tree listed for 7 years and they don't see any prospect of a new tree there. So that was just a quick comment to add to that. The main thing I wanted to ask about is that it's some 3 years since this panel put forward the report on the provision of public toilets in Merton. And I'm very grateful for your energy and enthusiasm in taking on the role of the cabinet member for toilets. But we know that it's been harder said done than said, perhaps. I know that Morley's and Merton asked all the different political groups before the election what their plans were, aspirations were for improving toilet provision. And obviously very happy to hear anything you have to say on that. But it was interesting seeing our illustrious leader in his video recently asking questions about what businesses think and what residents think about improving our high streets. Because obviously provision of toilets is one of the most important things to help high streets thrive. I think you recognise that, and that's one of the things you've been aware of with things like the nighttime strategy and so on. And again, it is easier said than done. So that's certainly where I'm coming from, that there's opportunities to improve the high street experience by better public toilet provision. I'm grateful for anything you can tell me about the plans for the next week.
Thank you, Councillor Shearer. And we've already mentioned about friends groups or parks, and I know how to be part of the friends group myself. how it's often very much down to really hard-working people, but the effects can be transformational in terms of getting attention of the council, getting ideas, getting connection with the community, and also ultimately getting ideas funded. Which is partly why I'm really trying to encourage a friends group in my ward park, Lambeth Park. So on that note, is there anything else we can do to try and support friends groups in getting started, getting set up, encouraging new volunteers and members, and sort of leading on to that, kind of what are our ambitions for our non-green flag parts, so that basically all our parts can be seen as having a just better than the standard, like really upstandard with what we come to associate with Merton.
That's awesome.
Thank you very much. So first of all, we mentioned a couple of different parts, as you say, happy to look into those for you separately. Such a shame that such destinations for many people. It's hard to go to Wimbledon Park. You talk about self-learning. So we'd always thought that when we went through the process of getting the license to put on one at Wimbledon Park, we'd also think what we think the absolutely ideal size for a festival there is about 5,000. We set up this festival so they had the capacity for more. It's the first time that we've done a kind of semi-commercial festival led by the council. So last year we put on the Real Merton Festival with mostly free tickets and ended up with I think about 10,000 people there here. We had about 4,500 people there last Saturday before last. Some of those were complimentary, many of those were sold. I don't have the exact split with me, we can get that to you separately. And like I say, the size for those who were there kind of felt buzzy, it felt lively, good crowds in all the tents and all the stages. I spoke to the food vendors and didn't hear that experience. I saw lots of queues at the food vendors. And also they were definitely doing a good roaring trade. And we have asked for feedback. We've asked feedback from everyone who went. We'll be also asked for feedback from people that we work with. And we'll be thinking ahead to how we could do something similar in the future without, this year did have some actual grant funding and support, like how could we do something similar in the future, for example, partnering maybe with a commercial company who might be doing their own event one day and could be doing a community event another day. Because we did hear, well, I definitely heard it on people's spirits, particularly for families, how nice it was to have a festival so close to where they live, which had such high quality acts. And we had so few incidents there, something we should be really proud of. It shows, what Merton residents are like. They're not going out to cause trouble. They're going out to have an absolutely brilliant time. Apparently, the closest to a noise complaint we got was from the polka tent when MC Brown was on. So it's very loud. If you haven't seen MC Brown, he's absolutely brilliant. Those kind of hip hop versions of kids' books. It was amazing. It did get very noisy in there. It was great. Councillor Merton for the toilets. Yes, I am cabinet member for the toilets. And we had a good meeting with Morley's from Merton a couple of months before the election when we took them through the work that we've done. Because they have the sense that not much we've done, so much work we've done. It's just as you say, they actually moving, creating any new provision of public toilets, we'd said already, was kind of just a capital and revenue, the cost is huge. And we were very much hoping that through working with business, the community, we can increase access, and we have increased access, we increased the number and listed on our website. But out of the, I think it was about 100 businesses that were spoken to, it was really clear, no, we don't want to be explicitly part of a public toilet community toilet scheme, and that wouldn't change even if you paid us. We said from the beginning that paying businesses, we didn't think it was a sustainable option. At the beginning, it wasn't even the effective option to get them to open on this list. We still think there's work there to be done. We still think there's work there, particularly when there are new big developments coming, like we had at Wimbledon Court, where they put lovely new toilets, even changing places. Obviously, we worked together with company hard to TfL to get the new toilets at Morden. So we think change can be done, but working with, we have a lot of small businesses in our town centre, doesn't it? They didn't see that viable. But we'll keep going with that, and the team who are engaging with businesses in town centres will continue to try and add more to our list on our website. Castle Cat, yeah, I know you were very active over, for example, the Friends of Creation, very Creation Group, we had their brilliant festival at the weekend, where we had a great time. Again, bringing like hundreds of residents together. And there was a man, a young man, tried to set up a group in Lambeth Park. Are you in touch with him? Absolutely, exactly. And we really think, so he came to one of our meetings saying like, look, I'm just a person like, look, we'll just come, we'll support you, we'll try and get you involved. There's a few things. There's A is how we as council work with such volunteers. And we want to kind of maybe start doing some buddying up with some of the more experienced parks groups, and so they can offer a bit of support and advice. And again, with us increasing as a council our engagement with staff, and with having a new contractor who will have the explicit engagement officer as well, that will hopefully make it easier for residents to set up these volunteer groups and these ones to happen. Because as you say, our ambition is not to stop at 10 or whatever we get to, green flags that we get in a couple of weeks. We want to see more and more. We can't do that. We're at the Women's House.
So is the engagement officer will be active?
No, well, there's one already who's going to contact him.
I saw two. Okay, for final round of questions, I have Councillor Daniels, Councillor Henry, and then Councillor Harvey. Final questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. It's good to hear that playgrounds are being upgraded. I guess I've got like a two-part sort of question. Is there a pre-approved list of playgrounds that need to be approved? And also, is there an appetite for any accommodations for breaking ground for the new playground?
Councillor Henry.
Thank you. And I just want to say a big thanks to you, Henry. You're very small, but in Jamaica we say very Tarawa. Okay, my reason for saying this is I just want to thank you and your team for all the support. You think your team and yourself gave us annual community allotment. We had completed our Cabbage pilot and training centre. And at the moment, it's in very good use for the summer for everybody. It's a community thing. It's not for me, it's for everyone. And also, if anyone would like to visit us to see how it's been built, I have a very big clay graph of how it has been done. I could take it into council if you want. But, just want to say thank you. Because if it wasn't the green space and the climate changes funding, we could have done what we have.
Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm impressed and thank you for all the public parks you're bringing forward. It's great to use unused land into greenery and nice place to be around. I would like to know if you can have information about the selection process of planted trees. Is made on each street or ward. I'm saying that because we saw many oak plant trees, many tall trees, under section of several cables just below that. Already, maybe 1 2 years almost reaching the cables, as well as many. How do you plan the pruning and root control in San Carlos Avenue? Many very very old trees are getting reaching their front garden with the roots, and we have several residents complaining, about reaching their front garden, raising all the stones. So we'd like to know how you push forward control on those streets.
Thank you. Councillor Strang.
Thank you very much, Chair. So first we have to then there's an immediate list of next few playgrounds. Beyond that, we've got kind of within the green spaces teams kind of where we think are priorities. There's also, if you don't even do regular inspections of playground safety, and that's all good you prioritise. So, for example, Hayden's Road had one recently because there was some equipment that had to be removed for safety reasons, and so some new equipment was put in. That will always be a priority, but we'll always be looking for ideas of we think things really need to be renovated. I don't think there's currently any plans in capital for brand new playgrounds, but always happy to look at what is possible and what is not existing. I am responsible for allotments as well, but yourself the kind of other council allotments, and that was in fact a big achievement of the last administration. We brought that service in-house as well, looking after allotments. There were some some niggles there. We're working really closely to iron it out. We're meeting with all the allotment holders from Borough soon. Yeah, what you've achieved in your area with the grants to make that sustainable environmentally friendly is just amazing. Thank you very much. Public. There you go. Don't forget that one. Thank you. So we are thinking really carefully now about which trees we plant and where and why. We obviously have lots of very old trees that might have been planted 40, 50, sort of previous time before that, which may now be inappropriate for the sites that they're in, as you say, growing into wires or going into gardens. We have to keep an eye on both. It's an absolutely huge headache, particularly if say that it looks like there's any damage. If residents do think there is any actual damage to their property, that does need to initially be dealt with as an insurance claim. We can't just kind of cut down the tree just because they think it's damage. We need to get some assessment of that. But we are going around. There was a bit of backlog of some of the pollarding, so we're going to prioritise the pollarding, particularly instances where, for example, they have been growing into wires and have been causing issues. And that will be continuing. We've got a plan for increased activity there over the coming year, next couple of years. And hopefully, the issues that are planting, they're placed in an area where the roots don't cause issues, so they shouldn't grow to the height that would cause problems. And we've got planned in tree maintenance for the trees as well, so they should.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stratton. I appreciate the energy you brought to answering the questions. And I'd like to thank you and Councillor Newton for answering the questions tonight. This committee is doing the best performance since Canada. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next agenda item, which is updates to the work programme. The work programme has been published for the year ahead. One update is I will be asking Councillor Judge to take questions from the committee at a later date. Councillor Pepper.
Thank you. One of my questions was going to be about Councillor Judge, but I was also going to ask about Councillor Cooper Marvier as well, who would normally come and give priorities as well as cabinet member for sport.
We have to ask Councillor Cooper Marvier to attend as well. Any further questions with regards to the work programme? Councillor Pepper.
Sorry, Chair, when we come to the item on housing associations, I thought it might be worth some consideration of whether we might have a brief planning meeting as a group, either separately or before the meeting, because it struck me that last time we met with the housing associations, the panel darted about all over, asking different questions on different topics. We steamed the questions on the topics. We also had some residents along, which was great, but they were only residents from the chair's ward, and no other panel members had been aware that was a possibility and that they were being invited, and they may have brought different things. Housing association tenants in my ward, for example, don't live in blocks, they live in individual properties. So I wondered if we might have some consideration for that.
Thank you, Councillor Pepper. I'm just going through the work programme now. There isn't a specific item on housing associations. I know we discussed a task and finish group with regards to it was planning inspector, housing associations, and such things. Would we just drill down on that?
Sure, I was simply going off Councillor Johnston's was rather keen on us having an item, and therefore I assumed would put it in. I have to admit, because I haven't got a paper copy of it, I wasn't sure this meeting is going to go ahead. I haven't actually double checked it, but he was very, very keen on it, and so I thought we were going to do it.
No. So my understanding, Councillor Johnston, I will speak with Councillor Johnston. With regards to that, I think that would go task and finish route would be the preference of Councillor Johnston in charge of that, but as he's not here tonight, I don't have to make that decision and do it then. But I do believe that is a good idea for that task and finish route. We can set that up, drill down exactly what we're going to focus on. I think those are good ideas to that, and I'm happy to take that forward. Thank you very much. Any further questions with regards to the work programme? No. Thank you very much. Then I am. Oh, Councillor Pepper.
Sorry, I wasn't going to ask this question. Task and finish groups at the workshopping meeting. We talked about having one around ways that residents could sort of singularly access all the kind of planning and enforcement information. And that was given as a sort of good idea of a tap and finish group that we might have. And I just wanted to check that that's still in the mix.
Yes, I think there's a good idea. Let me go away and drill down on exactly what the task. I think one of the issues is when we were deciding on the topics, we managed to pick several of them, and then everything else sort of got shunted into the task and finish group. So now let's drill down on exactly what the task and finish group is going to focus on. That is a particularly good idea. I remember being raised at the meeting with regards to working out exactly how residents can get the clearest picture. Because as we're all aware as councillors, so much of what we do is connecting people to other people. Understood. Okay. Let me speak to officers and then I will have an update for you, probably over some of the measures next week. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for your attendance this evening, members and officers. Appreciate you being here. First meeting closed. That makes sense.